This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, welcome to this evening's first public hearing. That is a presentation of our completed water preliminary engineering report by Great West. So it's right at a year in the making. They were done with a preliminary or kind of a draft before then, and we've heard from them regarding the draft. And now this is the final report and the hearing of that. I think that's where I'll hand it over to the back row. I did have some available also. I don't know if everyone has, Joel. Me too. Mine's there. Yeah. The little, will you push the little mic button? Then anybody that's online gets to hear you too.
All right.
And you're recorded for now and forever on YouTube.
All right. Perfect. Well, we're just going to kind of go through the handout here. For those of you that were here back in October when we met with the council, this is going to look pretty dang similar. Just a few tweaks here and there. Just kind of summarizes the findings of the water system and what might be needed and where to go from here. Just talk a little bit about a preliminary engineering report, its objectives, what it is. Basically, it describes the existing infrastructure, whether it's water, wastewater, whatever be the system that's being studied. Looks at and defines the problems in the system. Evaluates different.
James, you just cut
Yeah,
in.
yes, I'm listening. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I didn't hear the gentleman state his name.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Joel Pilcher with Great West Engineering.
Thank you, sir. Please continue.
Okay. Evaluates alternatives to address the problems that are defined in the system, and then includes a selection of a preferred alternative. Establishes costs, potential funding scenarios, develops an implementation schedule. It's used to facilitate public comment, and then it's also used to required by regulatory agencies if there's any sort of compliance issues in the system, and then also by the funding agencies. They use that as part of their application for grants and loans. So the first thing with a PER that we'd like to do is look at the population and the planning period. The typical planning period is for 20 years. We started this in 2022, so we're looking out 20 years from there to 2042. Kind of look at Department of Commerce, U.S. Census data to establish historical population trends, and then try to make a projection over the planning period. As you can see there, the population's kind of been up and down, tend to grow. 2020 population listed at 917. For the purposes of this analysis, we assumed some growth over the next 20 years, 1% per year annual growth. So we're looking at a population in 2042 of about 1,100. So then with the population kind of established, we go in and look at the different system components of the water system. The first thing we like to do is establish what the water usage or water demand is. That's critical to calculate future water needs throughout the planning period, and it kind of comes into play with the sizing of supply, storage, distribution. It really kind of trickles through all the different system components. Oftentimes we'll use like flow meter records from the wells and service meter records, but in this case, some of your records are either a little bit incomplete or there's been issues, some anomalies when we look at the different flows, volumes from both the well meters and the service meters. So we felt that the most accurate calculation of the water demands was based on the well hour meter data from 2021, and using that hour meter data and knowing what the well pumping rates are, we're able to kind of compute the resulting monthly source flows. That first table there, table 2, summarizes the monthly average daily source flows and the resulting per capita per day water use, basically how much each person uses over the course of a 24-hour period. You can see in the wintertime, obviously usage is lower, no irrigation going on. Picks up quite a bit June, July, August, and September, and then drops back down to more normal flows over the remaining few months of the year. If you look at a yearly total for that year, it was a little over 111 million gallons was pumped into the system. That averages out to about 305,000 gallons a day, and that equates to 326 gallons per capita per day. So 326 gallons per person per day averaged out over the entire year. So as I mentioned, the average day demand 305,000 gallons. That equates to basically 212 gallons a minute over a 24-hour period. We also need to look at maximum day demands. We need to be able to meet the water needs, in the peak days in the summer. If we go through the daily meter readings throughout that year, the maximum day we found was 639,000 gallons a day. That works out to about 444 gallons a minute over a 24-hour period. From there, we try to project what the demands will be in the future using the projected population, the average per capita use, and kind of establish the water demands that we would need to meet, now and on into the future for 20 years. Table 3 there kind of summarizes the projected water demands every 5 years. Ultimately, at the peak design period population of 1,100, we're anticipating an average day demand of almost 359,000 gallons a day, 249 gallons a minute. So you can see that's gone up from 212 that we're experiencing now. And then the maximum day demand's going up over 750,000 gallons a day and a flow rate of 522 gallons a minute. The maximum day demands kind of come into play in sizing the water supply. We'll talk about that next. I've got 2 wells for water supply. Well number 2 produces about 350 gallons a minute, and well number 3 produces roughly 250 gallons a minute. Is that adequate? The DEQ standards state that the water system must be able to provide the maximum daily demand with the highest capacity pump out of service. So you've got 2 wells. If one of them's out of service, the highest capacity pump's 350 gallons a minute. That means you can only produce 250 gallons a minute when we've just calculated that the 2042 projected maximum daily demand is 522 gallons a minute. So we well short of what we need to meet growth and standards. An additional 272 gallons a minute of source capacity would be needed to meet the projected growth population and the DEQ design standards. Some other issues with the water supply: neither well is equipped with chlorination equipment to allow for disinfection of the distribution system should contamination be suspected. Back in 2014, one of the communication companies was installing new lines throughout the community and bored a hole right through the main transmission main from the tank and basically drained the entire water system. When that happened, to get that back up and running, the system had to be flushed, disinfected, tested to make sure there's no bacteria problems in the distribution system. Well, what happened is the operator at the time had to climb the water tank with buckets of chlorine, dump it in the top of the tank to make that happen. Not a very efficient way to get some sort of disinfection into the system. Another deficiency: the water supply is not equipped with a backup power source. Neither wells have a backup generator on them, so in the event of a power outage, the system would need to rely on the storage volume to maintain service to the users. Prolonged power outage could result in the community being without water after less than 2 full days at average daily flows. So without any sort of rationing or anything like that, there's only enough storage to get through a couple days if we have some sort of a prolonged power outage. Neither the new well 3 site nor the storage tank site have any security fencing. Lack of security fencing makes it difficult to prevent vandalism and ensure safe drinking water for all consumers. So those were the kind of the issues we identified with the water supply. We'll move on to the water storage component of the water system. The water storage tank is a 530,000 gallon on grade epoxy coated bolted steel tank. It's located west of town here above the golf course. Was constructed back in 1995. It's in fair condition right now. It does have some leaks in it. With that epoxy coating, it's only good for 15 to 20 years, and then to extend the service life and minimize corrosion, it's due for a recoat, a new paint job. Kind of the critical components of water storage: provides operational storage, obviously to meet the daily demands, and then it also provides your fire suppression storage. So there's a component of the storage that is there for fire protection. As far as what the required storage capacity is, DEQ Circular 1, Chapter 7, which is the DEQ Circular 1 is the design standards for water systems in Montana. DEQ is the regulatory agency that has oversight of all public water systems. Those standards state that the minimum allowable storage must be equal to the average day demand plus fire flow demand where fire protection is provided. So right now we've got an average day demand of a little over 305,000 gallons. The commercial area downtown, it requires a 2,500 gallon a minute fire flow for 2 hours. So if you add that fire flow demand to 300,000 gallons to the current average day demand of 305,000, you need a total storage capacity of 605,000 when we've only got 530. That gets a little bit worse as we look out 20 years with the average day demand going up to 358,600. Adding that fire flow component of 300,000 gallons, the total storage required in the future would be almost 659,000 gallons. So we've got a deficit there, not only now, but in the future. We'd need an additional 130,000 gallons of storage to meet those future demands. The water distribution system, it's actually not in too bad a shape. In general, the distribution system is well laid out. DEQ1 requires that the minimum size of water main for providing fire protection serving fire hydrants shall be 6-inch diameter, and then larger size mains will be required if necessary to allow the withdrawal of the required fire flows and make sure you've got a minimum system pressure of 20 psi throughout the distribution system. The reason they set that minimum residual pressure is so you don't create some sort of a backflow or a contamination event as you're pulling too much water through the distribution system. Most of the distribution system 6-inch or larger. A lot of asbestos cement pipe, some PVC pipe, a little bit of everything, cast iron. There is some leakage in the system. I think it's kind of widespread throughout the distribution system, and I know the operators have searched long and hard to try to identify where some of that leakage is, and I think some of it's been identified and fixed, but I think that's always going to be an issue and continue to get worse as time goes on. Static pressures in the distribution system range between about 100 psi in the downtown area and then 75 psi up here on the bench. As far as pressures go, there's plenty of pressure to meet the system demands. Next thing we do is, in order to evaluate the water pressures and flows, we take all the system data and import it into a computer hydraulic modeling program called WaterCAD. What this computer model does is identify specific problem areas and determine the most effective modifications to improve the system. Basically, it looks at what flows you want, what are your head losses through the distribution system, and then provides the resulting pressures throughout the system. It uses a roughness coefficient on the pipe interior. That's dependent on types of materials, age of materials. There's kind of some standard numbers for those different pipe materials. When we run that through several different scenarios, we look at average daily flow, peak hourly flow, and then we also look at with the maximum fire flow that can be attained through any given location while maintaining that minimum residual pressure of 20 psi throughout the distribution system. DEQ1 requires that the system must be designed to maintain a minimum normal working pressure of 35, which we've got between 75 and 100, so we don't have an issue with that. And then minimum pressure under all conditions of flow, fire flows, hydrant testing, water main flushing, must be 20 psi. When we look at the average day demand, we didn't see any problems throughout the distribution system. The model indicates normal operating pressures well above 35 psi. If we bump that up to the peak daily and peak hourly demands, it kind of shows similar results that the system is adequate for the flows and pressures that are needed. We then run that model to determine the available fire flows throughout the distribution system. We model those concurrently with the future peak daily demand flow. And then what we found is, with the exception of a few dead-end mains down on the south and east side of the system, minimum fire flow of 1,000 gallons a minute is available throughout the distribution system, which is kind of the standard for residential areas. Available fire flows, down on Main Street and the school area exceed 2,500 gallons a minute, which is what we want to see for those areas. And with that, they meet the recommended standards. Really, the only identified piping deficiencies are the dead-end mains, and at some point, to improve flows in those areas, it might be worthwhile to loop those dead-end mains. There's portions of the distribution system that don't have sufficient valves to properly isolate sections of the water main. There's a few areas where to shut down some of the distribution system, it requires shutting down a large area of the distribution system, where with the addition of some valves, that could be narrowed down pretty significantly. And with that, would be able to facilitate directional flushing of the system in the event of any sort of a contamination event. There's several old fire hydrants in the distribution system. I think, Eric, you've identified at least 10 that immediate needs to be replaced, and several more on the horizon. As I mentioned, there is some leakage in the water system. I think there's some through the distribution system, also some directly from the water tank. Back in 2012, we performed a nighttime tank drawdown test over 2 consecutive nights. And to accomplish that, what we did was filled the tank up full at 2 a.m., turned the well pumps off, and then measured how much the tank drew down between 2 a.m. and 5:30. During this time, very little water usage should be occurring, and it can be assumed that most of the change in the water level is in the tank is due to leakage in the distribution system. Both nights that this test was conducted, the water level in the tank dropped 1.7 feet in that 3.5 hours. Based on the geometry of the tank, the diameter and height, that correlated to a volume of 22,500 gallons over that 3.5 hour period, and that equates to a flow rate being lost of 107 gallons a minute. Now we recognize that there is some usage that occurs during the night, so we assume that maybe only 90% of that drawdown would be attributed to leakage. 90% of that 107 gallons a minute. It's still 96 gallons a minute or 138,000 gallons a day, and 50 million gallons a year. So it's pretty significant. Common rule of thumb is you'd like to see less than 15% of unaccounted for water in the water system. Based on what we found in that test, the unaccounted for water at that time was about 45%. So a lot of it was being lost. The system is metered. Individual service lines have water service meters. They are old, over 25 years, either have or close to exceeding their service life. The meter should be replaced in the near future to ensure the town is accurately metering all usage of the customers and to maximize revenue potential. It also lets you compare water pumped to water delivered, and let you kind of do some water audits on your water system to see and get a handle on how much you might be losing over the course of the year. So those kind of the deficiencies that we noted throughout the system. We then kind of go to an alternatives analysis. What are the alternatives to address some of those deficiencies? I think the key one is the water supply. We've already determined the additional supply is needed to ensure that maximum data demands can be met with the largest source out of service. What we felt is the probably the best alternative at this point is some new water supply wells just west of here at some town-owned property at the rodeo grounds. Back in 2011 and 2012, the town completed 2 exploratory test wells at that 2-acre parcel that the town purchased from the Rodeo Association. There's one deep well and one shallow well. The deeper well is 12-inch diameter, 220 feet deep. The shallower well is 6-inch diameter with a depth of 78 feet. The initial testing of those wells back in 2012 did not result in the well capacities the town was hoping for, and at that time the town elected not to pursue further work of the test wells at that time. As you can see, water supply has kind of been on the forefront for many years now. The town's been somewhat proactive in trying to identify ways to address those supply deficiencies. And then due to the continued water supply concerns, in 2021, the town moved forward with a water supply hydrogeologic and exploration recommendations report. Basically with that, what we did is kind of a desktop survey of all of the area surrounding Ennis, what the existing wells were, is there a good location to develop some additional water supply? Some of the things that go into locating a redundant groundwater supply source include the area hydrogeology. Can we adequately protect the source water? How close is it to the town's existing water infrastructure? And also the planned and expected growth in the system. And also the price and availability of real estate. Obviously, development's a big thing, and the price of land is not really going down, so that kind of all comes into play. So after we looked at and took into consideration all those factors, looked at what wells are out there, really around the Ennis area, there's 4 high capacity wells. 2 of them are the town of Ennis's wells. There's one other, I think it's north of here, and then there's one out at the Valley Garden subdivision. So there's just not a lot of high producing wells in the area. So after that analysis, the recommendation was to kind of go back to the rodeo grounds and see if some additional testing would show that maybe developing a couple wells at that location would be beneficial. So with that additional testing, the deep well, we found it can produce 150 gallons a minute. DEQ standards state that whatever your maximum flow capacity out of a well, you can only use 2/3 of that amount. And the reason they have that standard is so that you're not over pumping your well. So of that 150, you'd be allowed to use 100 gallons a minute of that well. That well could likely be completed as a redundant well by the DNRC definition and process. What that means is basically if you need additional water supply to meet your current demands, knowing that if one of your wells were to go down, you can do that by basically just a form and a small fee, and then DNRC says, okay, you can use that well without going through a full water rights permitting process. Right now, your water rights limit your total pumping rate at any one time to 550 gallons a minute. So that's kind of critical here, is that no matter what we do with the water supply, you're never going to be able to pump more than 550 gallons a minute with your existing water right. If you need to do more than that, then you're going to have to start dealing with some water rights and probably some mitigation, purchasing water rights, those types of things. But hopefully we can get some additional water supply, not have to go through that water rights process. That deeper well did already go through a full DEQ approval process. So that's been taken care of. They would look at it again because it's exceeded the 3-year approval window, but once it was approved before, there would be an issue with getting it approved at this point. The shallower well, 78 feet deep, produces 90 gallons a minute, which would allow for 60 gallons a minute usage. This well was constructed strictly as an observation well for testing purposes, so it wasn't constructed to all the DEQ standards. At that time, the needs was for testing purposes. It wasn't worth spending the additional money needed to drill a well that would meet DEQ standards. So that well did not undergo DEQ approval. Because it does not, pulling water from a shallow aquifer, not the same as what some of your other water rights or existing wells and the water rights associated with that. Unlikely we could do that as a redundant well through the DNRC. So if we wanted to use a shallow well, we'd have to be going through the water rights process to add that to the point of use to the town's existing water rights. And at that flow rate, it's probably not worth going through that permitting process, because it's not going to be cheap process. With that testing, the modeling suggests that drilling another deep well roughly 100 feet away from the existing deep well could potentially yield a little over 100 gallons a minute with a net usable capacity of 75 gallons a minute. That could also likely be completed as a redundant well because we're pulling the water from the same aquifer. So to do that, hopefully we could avoid the water rights permitting. And then that new well would need to go through a full DEQ, full DEQ approval process, because it's obviously would be something new. I kind of talked about the existing water rights, 550 gallons a minute. It has a total yearly volume, but you would never come close to approaching what that volume is. The real critical part of that water right is the flow rate of 550 gallons a minute. Developing additional water supply at the rodeo grounds, our estimated capital cost for that project is $925,000. We talked about the lack of chlorination and disinfection capabilities in the distribution system. If we wanted to add chlorination at each well house, the estimated capital cost on that to do both wells would be $95,000. We want to get some security fencing around well number 3. The estimated capital cost $11,000 to do that. And then we talked about a lack of backup power, installing a backup generator at well number 2, which is your largest producing well. I think that would be the location that makes the most sense. The estimated capital cost for that is $116,000. When it comes to the storage deficiencies, we mentioned that the existing tank is due for a new paint job. Something would have to be done to address the leakage in that tank, get those sealed up, and then we've established the need to add new or additional storage capacity at that in the system. 150,000 gallon on-grade glass-lined steel storage tank would be the cheapest way to provide that minimal additional storage capacity. The estimated capital cost to rehab the existing tank and add a second smaller tank, $1.675 million. Then we looked at, well, what if we just get rid of the old tank, build a new larger tank to provide that existing capacity and also the needed capacity in the future. New 700,000 gallon on-grade glass-lined steel storage tank. The estimated capital cost $2.587 million. There are cheaper steel tank options. These would all be bolted steel, different coating systems. Your existing tank is an epoxy coating system. We could get something like that. It would be cheaper than the glass lined, but you're going to be saddled with a recoat fee and 15 or 20 years of at least $500,000. And so I think that kind of weeds that alternative out just because of the future maintenance needs. I think if you're going to look at adding, getting rid of the old tank and adding a new tank, just having one single tank, a concrete tank would be the way to go. It's got the longest longevity, most durable, but it comes at a price tag. Capital cost for a new 700,000 gallon concrete tank, a little over almost 3.1 million. Distribution system, we kind of talked about. There's some old fire hydrants that need to be replaced. Estimated capital cost at that's $152,000. I should note that's if you basically hire that out, put it out to bid. If it's something that the town wants to take on themselves, obviously you could do it a lot cheaper. But if you wanted to include that in a project, that would be kind of the estimated cost to do those 10 hydrants. Talked about maybe adding some new valves in the distribution system. Estimated capital cost for that, $111,000. I talked about looping some dead-end water mains. I think that's a pretty low priority, but at some point might be something the city or the town wants to look at. Estimated capital cost to do those, to loop those dead-end water mains, a little over 1.1 million. Water meters, we talked about, they're aging, probably at the end of their service life. We looked at a kind of a program where you'd replace 20% of the water meters per year. And then after 5 years or whatever that time period is, eventually you'd have them all replaced. The estimated capital cost to replace 20% of the water meters, $117,000. Then we kind of go through a comparative analysis to the different alternatives. A lot of these, the alternative is to either do it or don't, no action, or to make the improvements such as the fire hydrants, the valves, the chlorination at the well house, backup generator. So there really is not much of a comparative analysis. It's either to make the improvements or not. And with the water supply too, I think we've spent enough time and energy studying that over the last 10 years that right now I think the best option if the town wants to add some more water supply is to focus on that section of ground here just west of Town Hall. But for the storage component, we've got 3 different alternatives there. What we do is we look at the life cycle costs. That includes, takes into account the capital cost, the lifetime operation and maintenance costs. I mentioned with an epoxy tank, you're going to have a recoat in 15 or 20 years. The glass line steel tank doesn't need to be recoated, so you would avoid that. It's a little bit cheaper, obviously, than the concrete tank. We also take into consideration operational maintenance issues, permitting requirements, social impacts, environmental impacts. A lot of these it's the same for any tank option, so they don't really come into play. Public health and safety, land acquisition, is additional land needed. I put product availability on there. That's really kind of come into play recently, especially with steel storage tanks. With the new funding requirements of Buy America, Pay America, where everything that these agencies are funding has to be American made. Well, there's only one company that makes glass-lined steel tanks in the United States. And what we're finding is that they are so overwhelmed right now that they're not even bidding on our projects. We've had 2 tank projects in the last 6 months, and the steel tank company didn't even bid. We had no option but to go with the concrete tank. So I put that there just because right now I think that's a big deal. Even if we wanted to go with the steel tank, I think we're several years out if you wanted to make that happen. So we kind of put together a summary of the recommended preferred alternatives, and I tried to prioritize those. Obviously, it's something that the town would want to revisit periodically. Maybe you would see these priorities different than I do, and please interject if you do. But I think we're really kind of focused on the 2 highest priorities. We need additional water, and we need to be able to provide enough storage to meet our demands and provide the adequate fire protection in the system. So those to me are priorities 1 and 2. Combined total of those 2 projects is just a little over $4 million. And this next section here will kind of talk about how you might be able to do those projects maybe somewhat more affordably than if you just went out and borrowed all of the money to do that. There are grant and loan programs out there. The Montana Department of Commerce has established what they call the target rate. Basically, that's the amount that they want to see communities paying for water and sewer to be eligible for grants. If you're not paying that target rate, then you're not eligible for their funding. That target rate is based on a percentage of the community's median household income. Right now, they're using the 2015 to 2019 American Community Survey data. The percentages that they want to see communities paying is 1.4% of a median household income for a water system only, 0.9% for a wastewater system only, and 2.3% for communities that have both a water and wastewater system. Based on that American Community Survey's data, the median household income for Ennis is listed at $46,280. 2.3% of that results in a combined water and wastewater target rate of $88.70 per month. Right now, based on the average revenues in both the water and wastewater system and the number of basically service connections or equivalent dwelling units that you have, your existing average residential monthly rate over the course of the year is $38.50 a month for water, $45.65 for wastewater. That combined is $84.15 per month. So right now you're at 95% of the target rate. You would have to get that to $88.70 a month to be eligible for any sort of a grant program. It doesn't come into play with the loan program, at least through the SRF program at DEQ, but SRF does have a loan forgiveness program that requires that you're at target rate to receive that loan forgiveness. So there are, as I mentioned, a couple state grant programs that the town would be eligible for. The Montana Coal Endowment Program is through the Montana Department of Commerce. They have grants up to $500,000 for communities that are at 100% of target rate minimum. If you're at 125% of target rate, you're eligible for, excuse me, up to $625,000. And then if you're at 150% of target rate, you're eligible for up to $750,000. Those grants require a dollar for dollar match. The match could be in the form of other grants, loans, or local funds. Those applications are only accepted every 2 years. They're tied to the legislature for approval. The next go around for that program, the application will be accepted in even years, so it would be 2024. Those applications will go to the legislature in 2025. Money wouldn't be available till later in the summer of 2025. So if you go that route with any sort of a project, you're looking at a minimum 2026 before construction could start. By the time you get money, get it project designed, get it approved, get it out to bid, you'd be looking at basically 3 years from now. The DNRC Renewable Resource Grant Program, they have grants available up to $125,000. There's no match requirement. Again, those applications are accepted in even years, and then they go through the legislature for approval. As far as loan programs, the Montana Department of Environmental Quality State Revolving Fund It's kind of a combined agency. DEQ and DNRC manage those funds. Right now, that money's at a 2.5% interest rate. 20-year loan term typical. You can go out to 30 years if improvements have that at least that 30-year life expectancy. They have up to 75% loan forgiveness possible, up to a total of $750,000. Basically, at the end of the project, if you've met all their minimum standards, they could then forgive that portion of the loan. It's essentially a grant. They just can't call it that programmatically. They call it loan forgiveness. You must be at target rate to qualify for that loan forgiveness. There is another loan program, USDA Rural Development, but with your median household income, you would be in the highest interest rate bracket. Probably wouldn't qualify for any sort of grants, so I don't think that's basically a viable option for the town unless something just totally fell apart through the SRF fund and trying to get money from that program. There's still some remnants of the American Rescue Plan Act, minimum allocation grants. Madison County has allocated $225,000 of its minimum allocation grants funding to Ennis for water system improvements. And then the town has committed $214,133 of its MAG funding for a project. So with that in mind, the proposed funding scenario for the recommended project of the new wells, new storage tank, you subtract the minimum allocation grants, the town has to kick in just a little over, just under $11,000 to supplement their MAG funding to 100% match the Madison County grant funding. So it's a dollar for dollar thing with that ARPA funding. And so if the town's getting 225 from the county, it's got to, with using 214 of its own money, own MAG fundings, then have to kick in about 11,000 to make that match. We talked about the SRF loan program, loan forgiveness, $750,000. We subtracted all those from the total project cost. We'd be looking at a loan of $2.8 million to address those two highest priorities. That's not cheap. Estimated monthly rate increase is about $23 a month to make that happen. Basically, every $100,000 that you borrow is about 80 cents a month on your monthly rate. And so just kind of keep that in mind if you try to move things up or down, change the amount of loan that you take out if you decide to do a project. So that's kind of summary of what we found up to this date or to date. I would certainly open it up to any questions.
You might want to stay up here.
Okay.
Thank you. This is good. Tony Treglia. So on table 1, when you were looking at census of residents, are you building in the projected growth of the plans that are already in place, 75 homes down here, all these other ones? And then are you also looking at households, not residents? Because in the summer, the people in town triples.
Yep.
Right.
No, it was looking strictly at census data for existing town population, full-time residents.
So
and then we just projected a 1% growth. I think you could look at many different places. You're going to find many different growth projections.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So more than likely the numbers are going to be bigger.
That could very well be.
Okay. The second question I have is, so in 11 years ago, you did your system leakage test, and my guess is that probably that leakage has gotten worse over time.
Potentially, I know the previous operator spent some time trying to find leaks. I think there were some identified. It could have gone up, it could have gone down. I don't know. Eric, do you have a feel for that?
Hey, I was watching those pumps run 24 hours. By the end of summer, we were at
So the leakage equals almost 50% of our water usage, right?
What? And I'll go, I'll add on to that. We've had people out with detectives in town, and I know there's more, but what I'm starting to see more is the service lines in town aging out. This is where I'm starting to see it. And it's especially on the lower part of it. Really
Older service lines, the highest pressure, you get old galvanized, who knows what, and yeah, they're,
mostly rolled copper. They just rolled it out. Threw it down.
I mean, I think it would be beneficial at some point, maybe in the near future here, to repeat that nighttime leak test.
Already got notes.
Okay.
We're gonna have to revisit this here real soon.
Okay.
My only question is summer or winter?
No, I think because the summer, you're going to have some people at night that are irrigating. So I think really to know what the leakage is, we want to do it now before irrigation starts. Also, we don't want to do it during a really cold period when people are leaving their faucets trickling. So, you know, the March, April timeframe, I think is the time to do it. And it's a cheap, easy test to see what you're dealing with.
But if half,
It's already, like, it's gonna happen, so.
because that's all, I mean, so half of our water usage is leakage, potentially. And none of this addresses that, right? So we could,
And old meters. You lose on meters. You always lose town. Or lose water. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that's some of the anomalies that we saw when we tried to correlate source flow pumping, system meter records. It just didn't make sense. And I think that's the two reasons why. I think by doing the leak test, we know that over a 3.5 hour period, you lost this much water, and most of it is probably going in the ground. It's not dependent on the meters or anything. It's real. It's water that's lost out of the tank.
Can you take it a step further and possibly shut some parts of town down? See, like this section, that section.
We'd really have to study the map, I think, and I've thought of that in some systems. You know, we'd have to see what we can isolate, you know, and not basically leave people without water. But yeah, I think there's first, I think we need to see what the total is, and then we could look at, okay, where is it? Is it all in one area? Is it throughout the town? That would take a little bit more effort, but I think it's doable.
and then last question I have is, so right now we're $4 below the um, target rate. So we know that's going to come in. Does this $23 a month estimated cost of the rate increase include that $4? Or is the $4 on top of that 23?
No, that's the total increase you would see. And what that's going to do is it'll get you that $4
Okay.
to target rate, and then you'll be $19 above target rate. If you did that properly. Yes.
Got it.
Because the eligibility is based on the charge rate at the end of the project.
Thank you.
Do that.
The glass line steel storage tank, besides availability, what is it? Are there any other cons to that? Does that ever need recoated?
Doesn't. It's actually a good coating system. The cons to it are it's a bolted steel tank similar to what you have now. They all leak a little bit. I don't know that I've ever seen one that is completely leak free. That's just the way they're constructed.
Concrete or
Probably.
better?
So concrete is the best option in the long run. It's the most durable, stands up to seismic conditions better, but it comes at a cost. I mean, so you've got to kind of weigh the cost benefit there. And again, like right now, we don't really have an option. It's the tanks we're putting in are concrete because that's all we can get. But hopefully that's not always the case. I think a glass line bolted steel tank is a fine, cheaper option for communities that are really strapped, and it'll last them, 40 years. The only maintenance on the glass line tank is all of the bolts, and there's a lot of them, and every seam, because what they are is basically 4x8 panels that they overlap and bolt together. Although around that, the bolts and on the seams, there's a caulking, basically a sealant, and that has to be replaced every, I would say 15 years at least, maybe 10. And so that's, that size tank, $80,000 or $100,000.
Wow.
We're working on that, yeah. Concrete seems just like a no-brainer. And not that much price difference.
And then think about when you said seismic in between, not that we've had a lot, but it's not like there's no potential here. Just as a side note.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So you can't use flex.
It's something similar. I mean, it's a flexible sealant, but it only lasts so long.
So Colette, you said that the target rate has to be completed by, or has to be reached by end of the project completion. So if we're looking at the whole process and going through, we're not going to be to tank and well within probably it's like the next 3 years. So we're looking at that rate increase probably over the next 3 years,
Yes.
not next month.
Or longer, right? If we can't.
So,
start.
yeah, you could do this kind of as fast as you want or as slow as you want. I mean, if you want to pursue this now, we would submit a loan application. We would get the process kicked off. We could start design in 2023. We could essentially be constructing these in 2024. That's about the fastest we could do it. So you'd be looking at having those rates in place at the end of the project in 2024. What you'd have to do before you close on your loan when you need the money is you'll have to pass a resolution of intent to increase the rates, go through that process, basically saying that, yeah, we know we need this much more revenue. Here's our process, here's our plan. We're going to raise the rates, and whether it's, in 6 months and then another 6 months, but that by the end of the project, you will be at whatever the rate needed to retire that debt.
And so to add on to that, what I was kind of saying was that to be eligible for the grants, even though you're not at your target rate right now, if you wanted to look at that longer term, the 2026 construction, because the project would put you at or above your target rate, you could still apply for those grants next year if that's the path you wanted to take. So you would be eligible because your end result puts you above target rate. And then you could also look at
Eric, maybe you know the answer. Is our current storage site large enough for the concrete tank?
Not without tearing down the tank. And yeah.
It would cost so much to disinfect that, to use it again.
Well, and the problem with that old concrete tank is it's not high enough. I mean, you would see a huge reduction in flows and pressures in the distribution
Oh, you mean
system. The one down here. Yeah.
there?
Mhm.
Given that you presented a lot of good information, you've identified things that Ennis does. How does Ennis stack up with other towns in the county? A typical town in Montana of this size. I mean, are we, as Ennis residents, ahead of many towns, or are we really in trouble here with regard to the things that we have?
I think nationwide infrastructure is I mean, everybody has infrastructure needs. We are working on, I mean, I don't know how many projects we're working on right now, whether it's water or wastewater. Everybody has the same problems we do.
I think that scene, everybody's heard about this ARPA program that Joel talked about some funding through the ARPA program. When that first came out, communities could submit applications for funding, and there were 300 applications or something. I mean, there was way more need than there was funding. So even though the state got $2 billion or whatever it was at that time, there was not enough money to cover the need across the state. And so,
we're with the map towns, that's all 3 towns, we work together kind of, and we share equipment. They're all shared in, they're all in the same boat, same,
yeah, they are. And I think
we're old towns,
Yep.
Doesn't that mean the funding is going to be really scrambled for?
Well, I think it already is. Especially the grant programs, they're competitive. It's a competitive process, and those agencies go through and rank the grants based on what the program is trying to solve. Like the Montana Coal Endowment Program, their projects that they want to fund are geared towards public health and safety. Do you not have enough water supply? Do you not have enough storage? Is your wastewater lagoons leaking? Those types of things. The DNRC, they fund projects that benefit a natural resource. Are you eliminating leakage? Are you developing a new water supply? Are you eliminating contamination from your wastewater lagoons and then turning around and taking that and spraying it on an irrigation crop or irrigating a crop with that? So they're tailored to different things, but they are a competitive process. Now, the last few grant cycles, there's been enough money floating around. The state has recognized that infrastructure is a big deal. And so they've chosen to fund all of the applications for, I don't know how many cycles. Is that always going to be the case? Probably not. I mean, it didn't used to be that way. So the Montana Coal Endowment Program, it runs off of, many years ago, they took some of the coal severance tax money and put it in a fund. And what they've been doing is they get a percentage of the interest that's developed off that. And it's right now they get about 17 or 18 million dollars per biennium, and that's how they fund the projects. So they rank the projects, they go down based on what communities are eligible for, and once they reach that minimum or that total amount of dollars, everybody else is out of luck. Now, the last few times, the state has taken some of general fund money or something else and put that into those programs and funded all of the applications, which has been great for Montana communities. Will it be sustained? No, I don't think anybody knows. I think those programs will always be there. I mean, there's been runs at the legislature to try to steal that money and do something else with it. It's been beat down every time, so I think it'll always be there. It's just there may not be as much. Strike while the iron's hot. I mean, there's surplus ARPA money right now. I mean,
I think one other thing I think that's a really great question to compare with the other communities, because there are a lot of communities in very similar situation. But another thing that communities often want to look at is the rates, because Joel just talked about a $23 a month rate increase, and that's, not a small chunk of change for most families. So that would put you guys at, a little over $60 a month, I think, if I remember, 38, so somewhere around there for the water. And the DNRC does a rate study, and so with that rate study, the average water rate around the state right now is a little over $50 a month. That was in 2021, so that's a couple of years old now. So I'm sure it's higher now, but many communities are paying much more than $60 a month. So that is, it can be difficult to think in terms of those numbers, but it is comparable, I guess, to what other communities are doing too.
Tony.
She's brought up something on wastewater. So this is outside of anything that we need to do for wastewater.
We'd already have contracted with them to complete the wastewater preliminary engineering report as well. We knew that this was the priority of the two, but we knew that long term, especially with new standards coming out, that we were going to have to adjust that end of the system as well. So it's kind of like we don't know what's coming, so we're going to do this magic prediction thing and see how that's going to come out. But they haven't set those standards for those systems, so it's kind of a yes but no. We know we're going to need improvements, but it's hard to know when we don't know what the bar is. So we knew that was coming next, this part, and then that.
So when we look at, let's say, $23 more per month at the end of this project, we do the same thing with wastewater. There's potential more coming into play per month cost per citizen.
Yeah, and we are actually doing a wastewater preliminary engineering report as well. That's very near completion, and we'll be having a meeting very similar to this to go through all of those details. As the mayor said, right now, the regulations for the wastewater side of things are very much up in the air. There's lawsuits, we don't know what the nutrient standards are going to be. But we have gotten, we've done enough analysis with your permit on the wastewater side of things that if you continue to discharge, it is very likely you're going to get nutrient standards. So TN and TP, total nitrogen, total phosphorus, that you're going to have to start treating for, which your system is not designed for. And so you're looking at possibly moving towards a mechanical treatment plant or looking at some different storage options and, not to discharge. So I will tell you, mechanical treatment plant will be much more of an expensive project than anything we're talking about with the water system.
Yep.
Operators. So we do have that analysis, near completion as well. And so we'll be coming back to go through that in a lot of detail. Still looking at a crystal ball somewhat, but that is probably at least 10 years out that you would have to, even consider implementing something like that.
So we're good for 10 years.
Ish.
I mean, it's really good that you guys are starting to plan. I think, and I don't know if you have on the agenda later to give you a quick update on the wastewater. So
I didn't, but.
No, okay. So, I mean, I can provide as much detail on that as you want right at this point in time, but yeah, I think it's gonna be a couple of years before you have a new permit. You're still under an administratively extended permit. And so I think it's gonna be a couple of years yet before you actually get a new permit issued. I think it's very likely that permit will have new limits for TN and TP. At that point in time, you'll likely be working with DEQ to develop a compliance schedule. And so then from there, you will update this preliminary engineering report to kind of really nail down what is the best option for the town. And then you'll go through this process, and you will definitely want to be pursuing grant funding at that time to help support implementation of that kind of project.
And that's why we're trying to get both of them done so that we were ready for the even years, that we were completely lined out. They take a long time. They collect a lot of data, spend a lot of time reviewing our system. So hopefully we're online with the grant cycle after this. That was the goal. So.
I have a question too. Has the town done anything since these studies were done in 2012?
Thank you, Mike.
Has the town done anything since a lot of these numbers came out in 2012?
I mean, no major projects.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Eric and Kelly previous have
Right,
done
but
some
that's it.
maintenance stuff, but
That's it. So we need to.
no major improvement projects since 1995 is the last one I know of. I actually was involved in that one, so I've
Oh, wow.
been in Ennis for a long time.
Okay, so we need to get moving.
So rate increases, are you guys in charge of like setting up like a rate increase for us, like incremental, or who actually sets those numbers, I guess? Is it us?
Well, it's you guys, it's the council in conjunction with a bond attorney. You work with bond counsel. They walk you through that entire process. They help you with all the resolutions, and they go through with the funding agency and determine, okay, you need X amount of dollars every year of additional revenue to retire this debt. Here's what, and in conjunction with the town, figure out what that is, how best to approach it. and then walk through that process. So it's kind of a joint effort. We really, other than saying, here's how much your project's going to cost, we don't, don't have much of involvement in the rate increase process.
Okay.
There's other experts that can do that better.
Sure. One other question, I guess the chlorination, is that something like, safety is always paramount, is that an essential item that we have to do with our treatment system? Is it just a recommendation?
It's a recommendation. Right now, you're not required to provide disinfection. You don't have a history of bacteria hits. And so it's a preventive measure should you ever have some sort of emergency situation in the future where somebody digs through your line and drains the system. That's really where it would be needed. And that could be tomorrow, that could be in 20 years. Who knows, but.
So the more construction that's involved in time, the more likely your line may be.
From what I've
Could be.
been told, if you put the disinfection on your system, now required. This I got from a guy, I think he was, I don't know the time.
Well, Virginia City has to use chlorine forever now, right? Is that?
I don't know if it's required just if you install a system. I don't know if it automatically would be required. I guess that would be a question for the EQ. Once you do
really great
chlorinate, I
area,
know it's
'cause I
hard.
have looked and asked about this. Oh, it's
But
a
once-
really gray area.
Once you use it, I don't think there's any going back.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you put it on there, use it, well, there you are.
And I think that's been some of the
And
hesitation.
it's
Joel
cost.
probably speak to that in the past of installing.
Yeah.
Yes, Tony?
Yeah, I don't think anybody thought you'd need it back in 2014 when they drilled a hole through your transmission main either. I mean, that's gone many years without that need, and all of a sudden it was pretty critical, and you haven't had to deal with it since. So
So the proposal has $4 million, right? But on the previous page, the recommended improvement program is 5.7. So under the proposal, what's not getting done?
everything below priority 2.
Yeah, it's just the top.
So just the new well and the tank would be.
So chlorination valves, backup generators.
I mean, those are certainly things the town could decide to add. It's just going to increase the loan amount.
And it's not uncommon for communities like yours to address these projects with that kind of phased approach. So that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. If there was something, if you wanted to get that water supply well and go take a loan to just do your water supply and get that going right now, that's an option. And then you could still use this PER to supplement grant applications for some of these other priorities, next year, and then have that project just kind of. And then a lot of communities will do that. Every 2 years, they update their PER, apply for grants, do a project until it's all taken care of. And so that's very common with many communities that we bring in.
The biggest key right here, not to have this done and not do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's, what's the point? I mean, look at where it's got us.
Nikki?
Yes, James?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this most thorough report I could imagine. So really want to thank you on behalf of the town. I mean, I'm sure the commissioners and the mayor also, and Eric, very appreciative. I mean, most detailed report that I've heard in many years. But I had just a couple of quick questions for you. And it seems like you have your leakage, water supply, and storage. How would you prioritize those 3 issues?
Well, I think the leakage and the supply go hand in hand. I mean, we've already shown, or we've determined that probably we're not going to be able to even with 2 new wells, meet what we really need to from a design standpoint, just because the water's not there. But if that was done in conjunction with eliminating a lot of the leakage, that would put us a lot closer to that target. Now, the problem is, what do you have to spend to eliminate that leakage? I mean, is it replacing 75% of the service lines in town, replacing all the cast iron water mains? I mean, you could spend millions to do that. I think the town's been very proactive trying to identify the largest leaks and getting those repaired, and I commend them for doing that. But I think you're going to always be chasing that. It's like Eric said, it's not going to go away. It's going to continue to get worse, and try to stay on top of it the best you can. I think if we can do another test and maybe we find it's only 60 or 70 gallons a minute, then we're narrowing it down, and that's just more water available for the users. I think the water supply, I think, is definitely the highest priority. I mean, it's been the highest priority for 10, 11 years now. I think the storage is the next highest priority, kind of like we presented them 1 and 2. You could limp along with the storage tank for another 5, 10 years. I mean, I worry. I've seen the tank. It's got some corrosion on it. That's just going to accelerate. And then once it gets beyond the point of no return, you're going to have a lot of leaks in that tank. But I just can't recommend you spend $500,000 right now to repaint that thing when
It's still not going to meet capacity.
it's almost 30 years old and you don't have enough capacity.
To get that tank working the way it should be. Is there any-
All right, let me ask you another question.
Sure.
Am I correct that you stated somewhere in your report that under the current DEQ analysis or requirements that the town is not meeting its requirements?
There's both with supply and storage. We don't meet design standards. Now, DEQ is not going to come to you and say, you must fix this. What they'd like to see is, as you try to make these improvements, that you then are able to meet design standards. And with the water supply, we'll do the best we can. But I don't think we're going to get to what the design standards are. I just don't think it's feasible without adding several wells somewhere. The storage, most communities don't meet the recommended standards. But like I said, DEQ is not going to come knocking on your door and say, well, hey, you got to do this. But if you do a new tank, they want you to meet their standards.
Okay, I understand that. I appreciate that clarification. Final question. Based on what you know about the current demands and the DEQ requirements, what would you say to the town if this was a different type of hearing? What would you say to the town if, instead of considering your report and water, improvements, what would you say to the town if you came to a hearing and what was on the agenda was the possibility of, an annexation adding 30 units or, 150 housing units? What would you say to the town based on what you know currently?
I think where the town is going to be limited is they can allow some growth up to the point where the maximum daily demand exceeds the water right capacity of 550 gallons a minute. So you could add however many people into the system until you get to the point where you're pumping more than 550 gallons a minute. And then DNRC is going to say, no, that's your water right. So I think in the future, if new developments want to come onto the system, they're going to have to bring water rights with them. I mean, that's my recommendation to the town. If you got some 40 lot subdivision here south of town that wants to hook on to the town's water system, then I think a condition of that is, okay, but we don't have enough water rights for you, so you're going to have to find some for us.
Thank you. I think that's excellent
I mean, that's
advice.
about as blunt as I can put it.
Well, it's pretty much consistent with what I've recommended as well. So that's it. I mean, that's it for me. Thank you very much for those answers.
You're welcome.
What else? I don't know. This is our first one of these, so.
Yeah, I think that, that wraps up the questions. I think that then, we will incorporate kind of a summary of the public comment into the preliminary engineering report. It'll come in a much thicker document than this little summary. It'll be a nice big binder that you'll get here soon. So we'll incorporate that, and then it's just up to the commission if you want to pursue, a funding application to SRF to do one of these projects now. If you want to pursue grants, in 2024, combination of the two, you guys can, put that on your agenda as an action item at some point and, offer us that direction, and then that will tell us how to proceed.
Okay. And I'm sure Eric will be contacting you for the leak down.
Oh, yeah, actually, I'm really excited about it.
It's really simple. You
Me
just
and
have
Matt
to stay
did
up all night.
some, we did a lot of work.
He got used to that snow plowing.
Yeah.
I want to.
Well, I'm curious too. I mean, we've been
They
talking
were
about
two huge ones, so I'm
doing this
excited.
many years ago, and just because I'm curious to see if it's better, worse, same. Hopefully, it's a lot better. But
I can show you our graphs from last year. So retention draws down. Used to just.
yeah, oh, that's what you want to see.
And it even does this. Oh.
All right, perfect. Any other questions before we let them do their thing? Are you guys driving back tonight? All right, well, we're gonna let them, if nobody has any other questions for engineers, then we're gonna let them go because they still have a fabulous road trip ahead of them and the roads are so great. So thank you guys
Welcome.
immensely. And we're gonna be in touch and we'll make our plan, our decision from here.
Yep. And then I'll also be in touch on the resource.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Be careful.
Thanks.
My heart stopped a little bit with some of the numbers. But it'll be okay. I'm just restart here. That's great.
It's pretty spendy though. I was gonna ask him if that was overinflated price.
Maybe you're the few that are push on. Right.
Well.
We struggle. We don't really.
Oh,
So what we do wrong, we post it.
up by mine.
No, I didn't officially close the public hearing. I should close the public hearing. All right. So that's the conclusion of the public hearing portion of this evening. Thank you all for participating and questions. Yay, there was people in the room. Pretty excited. I feel there may be more people in the room when we talk about rate increase. Call me crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're to the second portion of the evening, which is we have a vacant seat that needs to be filled. We've had 2 letters of interest. So we will ask you guys some questions. Hi, if I can see both of you. Have a little discussion and then see who gets to hang out for the rest of the year. Who wants to go first? Okay. What? Well, we're going with this. Thank you for finding it. Oh, you have to go to the mic so that everybody can, so that you can be on YouTube with everybody else. All right.
In case for those that don't know, my name's Craig Abernethy. I've been a resident here in Ennis for about a year and a half now. I do live in town.
All right, so that was kind of the introduction of the first part, which is tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, well, I'm currently a service manager for a adventure rentals company, but for the last 28 years, I've been a project manager, senior program manager, primarily government contracts, defense contracts. I've been, let's see, I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, a master's in organizational management, that I got a number of years back. That's pretty much a real high level, my background, but if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer. I lived in what started out as a small town, relatively small town in Southern California, that had over the past 60 years have grown into a much larger town. And it was a very rural town. It was not uncommon to see people tie up their horses at the grocery stores. It was all farmland, all farm community that is now very overgrown. And what I witnessed was the infrastructure in the area was always playing catch up. There was never really thinking ahead, especially when it came to roads and support, personnel, emergency services, and so on. It was just, we just need to develop all this land. They knocked down a bunch of hills and a lot of, nice views and so on, and just built and continues to this day. It's one of the main reasons why, among other reasons, but main reason why I left there and came to a small town. Well, my folks, back in the mid 70s, we came up here to Montana, but over in the Bitterroot area. And my folks were friends with people that lived up there and raised horses and so on. And we had been going back and forth over the years. And my folks owned some property that they bought in the Bitterroot, which they subsequently sold. But Montana's always, it's always been a dream of mine to come to Montana and live in Montana, so going back to the mid 70s, but never managed to get here until about almost 4 years ago. My brother and I, we bought some acreage in Virginia City ranches, and just really love the area. It's close to Yellowstone. It's close to Virginia City. It's centrally located. Fishing, the town is known for its fishing and just recreation. And we thought this would be a great place to eventually retire and to just live.
Do you want to ask the next question?
I would. If you are to be elected, what are 2 items that you're going to make a priority?
As far as, well, I certainly would want to become much more familiar with the town and people that, are living in the town and what their concerns are, and what they would also like to see, as far as the direction of the town goes, and with regard to development. There's a lot of things on the table between not just the water, but there's infrastructure issues. There's there's still lingering questions about a dog park and so on. So I'd like to become more as familiar as I could with the town and the public concerns, and how to address those. That'd probably be the first thing I'd like to do. The second thing is just to be able to try to help keep the small town kind of feel of the place. I know there's been lots of talk about roundabouts and changing the downtown parking areas and how we park downtown and that sort of thing. And I know a lot of that has to do with Department of Transportation. Some stuff might be out of our hands, but I need to become more familiar with those type of things and what other communities are doing, like Virginia City or Sheridan, how they're handling things. So probably first thing is more localized, but second thing I'd like to do is kind of expand my knowledge of the surrounding towns and what they struggle with and how they deal with things.
Somebody want to ask the next one?
Brandy.
What if I don't want to read that one? Turn your mic on and read a question.
Hate this thing. Okay. Do you have examples of an occasion where you had to respond to questions that went beyond your knowledge? How did you handle the situation?
I had a lot of those. So as a project manager, typically I would, if I had somebody, if I was at a meeting or design review or whatever it might be, and got some of those questions, I'd usually like to always travel with somebody else, a colleague that was maybe more knowledgeable in particular areas that if I couldn't answer it, I could defer to them. If it was something that we just couldn't answer, of course I'd, take an action to go find the answer for them.
Why do you want to serve as a commissioner?
Because I want to be involved in the town and its workings. And actually, I do the things or help out with the public concerns and that I couldn't do where I used to live. As a kid, I mean, back where I used to live, I could see a lot of development and hear a lot of complaints, but couldn't really do anything about it. So I would like to get involved with the community in the town in a capacity where I could actually maybe help make a difference.
What is your one strength that would make you the best candidate for a town commissioner?
Organization, attention to detail. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, back to me. What do the three branches of government mean to you?
You mean the executive, judicial, legislative? What do they mean to me? Well, the legislative is just that. I mean, as far as passing laws and enforcing laws, or passing laws. Judicial is more of enforcement, and the executive is more of the oversight.
I'm so glad.
You.
A problem has arisen. What resource do you use to resolve the issue?
I think it depends on the problem. Is it a town matter or a legal matter or
Town matter.
if
Well,
it's-
the whole question is intentionally vague.
yeah, I would.
I know.
So my go-to resources would depend on the nature of the problem. And if I didn't know who it was, then who or where I should go, then I would probably lean on a lot of my colleagues if I was on the commission as to where I should go, who I should talk to, how we should proceed.
That's all the questions we have. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Abernathy? All right.
You said you bought land in these ranches, but where do you reside in town?
Yes, so I rent a place, actually just behind Sportsman's Lodge here.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I was like,
I didn't want to
two of them.
not allow you of that.
I forgot that one. Always ask. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Now you get
Thanks.
the grilling.
Hello, my name is Ted Schaefer. I own the Red Bear Inn, and I live at the Red Bear Inn, so I live in town. Previously, I worked for Xerox for 35 years as an engineer, and then met and fell in love with a redhead who grew up in West Yellowstone and decided that the corporate life was enough for us. And she always wanted a hotel. So we looked it all over, but we just kept coming back to this area. So the opportunity arose, so we bought it. And here I am, and here I plan to stay. This is the last chapter of my life, and this is where I'm going to end.
So is that to tell us a little bit about your background? Same thing.
Oh, I worked for Xerox as an electrical mechanical engineer. I was more or less like a troubleshooter for design. Machines would go in. They didn't go in. There was issues. I had to resolve those issues, whether it be with sales, the building itself, because the equipment itself was 30 feet long, 9 feet tall. Started at $1 million. So there was a lot of logistics that went into it, and I think that's one of my strong suits is logistics.
If you are to be elected, what are 2 items you'll make a priority?
It seems like the buzzword in this town is affordable housing. Everybody says affordable housing. Affordable to who? If you're making, exactly, working class. So affordable housing, it all depends. If you're making $100,000 a year, yeah, this house can be affordable to you. Let's call it what it is. It's low income. It's to serve the backbone of this town. Your bartenders, your servers, your mechanics, the people like that can, at this time that I see, cannot afford to live in this town. I myself recently purchased a property in Sheraton for my employees because I couldn't afford it in Ennis. Did I want to go to Sheraton? No, I wanted to stay in Ennis because this is where, like I said, this is where I'm ending my career, my life, or whatever you want to call it. And that's what I want. And a quote to a famous movie that I always feel it's, the needs of the many, the town, outweigh the needs of the few or the one. So the town itself takes priority over everything. Not what I want, not what I like, but what the town needs and what the town likes. So, like I say, affordable housing would be the first thing. The second thing is get to know more of the town. Because when we came here, for the past almost 4 years now, we worked 16, 18 hours a day, all day, every day, 24 hours a day. We got this housing, we're bringing somebody in to afford us the time to get out, meet people. I mean, we go down to the Hunter's Feed, nobody really knows me. But I want that to change. I want them, oh, that's Ted. He owns a Red Bear. So that's one of my goals. Yes. The sayings come from family a lot. You'd be surprised how many people. Lightheartedness. So many people are serious. Some people like my sayings. Some people don't like my sayings. I mean, if you can't laugh, if you can't have a good time, again, most of my sayings come up from my guests. My guests will come in there and they'll say, I think this is funny. You know, if you have a saying that you would like to put up, or anybody in this town that would like to have a saying to put up, they think it's funny, that they would enjoy, call me. I'll put it up. I have a list. I'll put you on the list.
All right, Brandy, you're up.
Okay. Do you have examples of an occasion where you had to respond to questions that wouldn't be on your knowledge?
All the time. In my previous job, all the time. And the way I always handled it was the way I answered it. First of all, I take ownership of that question, that problem, that issue. It's mine. And the way I always responded, if I don't know the answer, I will find someone that does know the answer. And then I stay in the loop until it's completely resolved. Did it for 35 years. It's just how I handle things.
Why do you want to serve as a commissioner?
I grew up in a town that was 2 square miles. Around that town was peach orchards, apple orchards, blueberry fields. A little bit further down the road was cranberry bogs. Now that town, people come in, they rape and pillage your town. You take the money they run. There's a strip mall in that town. Six buildings or 6 stores. Developer come in, realtor come in, sold it to the town. They allowed it to happen. Great. Okay. 6 years down the road, that same developer, the same realtor, they want to do it again. But yet that building with the 6 stores sit empty. Why? Why put up another building? But yet they sold it to the town bought it. I don't like that. I disagree with it. And so many times I would sit in some meetings or even listen to certain meetings here. People come in and they bully you guys. They just bully us. The same as back in New Jersey. They bullied them there. And then once you get the powerful politicians in the town or the state, they're going to do what's right for that developer because they're going to fund their next campaign. I've always been for the underdog, plain and simple. And I don't want to see Ennis turn into my old home. Plain and simple. I mean, 2 square miles. Last house I lived in there, I wish I could exaggerate. I could lift my window as I'm cooking dinner. Hey, Ginger, what are you making for dinner? That's absurd. And I don't want that to happen to Ennis. Because what you guys decide does not affect today. Well, it does. But who it really affects is the kids of tomorrow. 20 years down the road. Any of you have young kids? That's what they have to look forward to is what is decided here. And I don't agree with it. Like I say, what's good for the town. That's all that matters. Plain and simple.
Me? Got my mic on? Oh, what's your one strength that would make you the best candidate for town commission?
My logistic ability. I used to be called with the machines I used to put in. They used to hate when I would show up. The salesmen want it. The analysts would go, yeah, that's good because they're all getting this commission. I would walk in there and be like, it's not going to work. This, and this. You know, it's not like, well, it's not going to happen, but let's make it happen where everybody's happy. Customer gets what they want, the salesman gets what they want. Everybody works it. Plain and simple. It's just, they used to hate me walking through the door because I was like, it's not going to fit. But it's not going to fit. It's not going to work. You don't have enough electric. You don't have enough water. So instead of just throwing it in, work through it, find the answers so everybody's happy in the long run.
What do the three branches of government mean to you?
Well, legislative is, you're the one's going to make the rules, the regulations, what we can and cannot do. Judicial is going to be the one that's going to be like, they're going to enforce those rules. They're going to be able to, this is the building code. You're not up to that building code. And the executive, they're the ones that are administration, management, in a nutshell, layman's terms.
Problem has arisen. What resources do you use to resolve the issue?
Depends on the problem. As an example, okay, let's say there's a bar float. I'm not going to call Nikki. Call John. Is there something wrong with the wood? The other day I had a plumbing issue. My guy. And if it's something I don't know, I'm going to call Nikki and say, okay, what do you think? Or Hardy or whoever I can reach. I'll get on the phone and I'm going to call everybody here until someone gives me the answer I was looking for.
Any other questions?
Hey, how about you? Do you have any questions? I'm getting good at it, aren't I?
You're getting good at it.
No, I do regret not getting to know everybody sooner. But like I say, working the hours we were working, I mean, it used to be a pleasure to sneak away to go get a lunch. It's in. So that's.
You're lucky to be where you're at. That's a good thing.
All right, if there's no other questions, then oh, wait.
Because it was a question that we asked previously for both of you. Do you have the time that this council requires?
If you would have asked me that last year, I would have said no. This year, I brought in someone to manage that for me. So I'm not there 24/7. We'll be there 4 days a week. It gives me 3 days. And at night, now I have somebody running it at night. So from 5 o'clock, I'm done. 4 o'clock. I can make my own hours.
I wouldn't say I have enough flexibility to make my own hours, but I do have some flexibility. As far as how much do I have the time? I'll make the time. I'll make sure I'm in Bozeman Monday through Friday, most of the day. But I have evenings and that weekends.
Oh, I'd like to have one question. If possible, I don't know if I can or cannot, but don't you have to go see a resort tax meeting tomorrow?
Yep.
Can I go with you?
Yes.
Because I've seen those resort taxes go horribly wrong. Like I met with that one guy that had that grand plan or whatever the town had to do. And he brought up the resort tax. I asked him 3 questions. He couldn't answer them.
Did you go to the meeting with the library?
No, it was held here. It was myself and the previous owner of the Blue Moon Saloon at that time. And like I said, he couldn't answer those 3 questions. And I've seen the resort tax go where, everybody in town's paying into that. Do you see any yet come in? I've seen it where the small little towns get stepped over by the big skies of the world. So if I can, I'd like to go with you.
Sure. Absolutely. 7:30 tomorrow.
You picking me up?
Yeah, sure.
Or I can go to your house. It's just that,
It's like, guys,
Depends how many, I don't know how many people are actually
finish up this. Then you can make your travel arrangements.
No, I can't go either, sadly. I really wanted to do that.
We got one more question on the floor.
Well, so I work in, sorry, I should clarify that.
Okay.
So I work in Bozeman. Monday through, I work in Bozeman, so, but I live here, so I don't, I'm not in Bozeman Monday through Friday, like, as though I'm not here.
Okay.
What I meant was that my job where I work from, morning to, to the afternoon is in Bozeman. So I leave here at 6:30 in the morning every day, drive up, work, and then when I'm done, I drive back down. So I'm in town. So I'm in town every night. Sometimes sooner, sometimes, earlier, later, but never later than 6. Yeah, no, my job is there, but I live here every day.
And just to confirm, you live at Red Bear
Right.
full time?
Hold on. You knock on the door, right behind the front desk.
So your house that you bought is not for you guys?
No, it's for employee housing. Because last year was almost like a breaking point for me, really. Because getting people to work, act of God. So this year, our plan was to get a house where, right now, it's a 5-bedroom house, 5 baths. So I can put 5 people in there. Because right now I have 2 rooms offline for employees. I'd like to recapture that revenue.
All right. So what? So I think last time I let them talk about it. They can,
Yeah, in there.
all right, go to your room. What's my room? Ginger's room.
Don't look at my messy room.
You can go sit at my desk
Is there candy?
in my office. Yes, there's candy in there. I think we're running low. I meant to get some and I spaced it.
I'm gonna have to make a Bozeman trip. It's
So,
You guys stay busy at the store? There used to be this like,
it's a rental.
right, this
So right now we're
And I usually play a lot of that was when you like a week.
right, we moved here to work on this. Not what we done, not what we walked into. But I'm like, we're not working for us. That plan got real.
Yeah. And then when I was like, well, when we switched over from that to our city road, this is the 4-year plan and we're gonna be out. And I was like, never. I would kill for her. That was 30 days. You guys.
We had a painter, they just left. As the road was going up. Yeah, that's nice. You moved house as well. We're right there, cheaper.
I know, I'm flowing.
Two months are
I
right.
spent about 28 years.
2 hours there.
Same engines.
I'm gonna respond to our.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
I didn't know. And well, then they're like, oh, urban marshal, like, well, if you get that, you know, like, I have no idea what she was calling you about, but I told her, best way is to email you. With. Yeah, they're totally like a company passport.
So.
They're like, oh, you want it on, you want it on. Like, I can't, and I'm like, well, you want it by the first of March, and you know, she was laughing, so I guess, like, we used to have one.
All this stuff in storage, and then I put it back, and then we go through. And make it big. And then the next one.
I've been here till that big, where's the side up, or the boots behind us. So I know she's one of the things up.
And like, I've had my room hours for that, 8 hours after that, I know the script, and then it leads you. Yesterday, and it was way home from. It was from Harrison. I was trying to cut off. And they were like, today. Great. The cake from Houston and these. And that's where I.
It's about 30.
I just getting ready for that next service. Just don't want to. Sounds like a valley.
No, it's not. South Pastoral.
She's like, and I hear squealing from the bedroom, and it's not my house. So I'm like, oh. All three of them are. Because that's what he said, yes, like, yes, but here's the deal, I'm not sure every day, so either.
I would watch it.
Everybody knows what they get. All right. That's great. Perfect. Reservations, and now I can't find them. Just. Free. What's going on? It's just. It's right there. fact that, well, it took me that. Well, that way. And like side of the room. My whole, my whole. Seeing everybody. Well, it's yeah, one lunch. I know.
Yeah.
And I was waiting, I'm like, he didn't get it. There are some times and then he like, really delayed response. Thank you. So, I'm super excited. He's so never touched his side of learning. Small library. Yeah. So. Last year was I want to remodel my deck a little better. And then he fell to the deck. And gave himself heat stroke, but I can send it on.
That's it, yeah.
I know. Anyway.
So,
I have a friend of mine, yeah, but anyway, yeah, anyway, it's good. Yeah, it's one of those doctors. So she gets to check on him, the mouse and check her. My flashing here, it's like, whatever, it is. Like, all right, I'll call him. Start. Yeah, I'm not. It's their time. Time. Yeah, it was kind of like that. It was like. So. That piece of property had to be set up. It's nothing. I started chicken curry. Well, and how do you feel? I mean, I feel like, in terms of development, how do you feel about the whole story? And then I found out. Nick. You know, what was interesting? Why not? I'm trying to get it. And then it all goes like, we went through this, right? Like, I don't know, and it was, all the stuff that goes on. We're talking about that should be there. Like that. One hanging out with us, crazy, and one hanging out with someone. And then 2008. And now, unfortunately, when we're developing came, it's sort of a, hey, man, really kind of more plan. No, it's not. And then that's short. Plan vision of some commercial brand. Okay. Which I nicely designed. Then it got sold on this person. That's not. And that's what we got. Six-story this, two-story, whatever. Just have that. But it's still, you're in a good place. Yeah, no, not too often.
Okay. This is ginger, this is a regular.
This one is not. This is a special meeting or a second meeting. Our regularly scheduled meeting is the second Thursday of the month. So that's the regular.
Sure, it was all one.
Yeah. We just had so much going on that Nikki's been doing, oftentimes 2 meetings, so that we're not sitting here till midnight. I start getting cranked. I think everybody gets a little cranked when they go on and on and on. 2 hours is plenty.
Sure is.
After a full day. A lot of times we go over 2 hours. Sometimes
Work.
there's no set.
I ate it.
No, but I found the bag of root beer barrel.
All right, council, after your deliberation, after interview.
I make a motion to appoint Craig Abernathy for the remainder of the vacant term.
Second.
All right, discussion?
Yes, you guys made it really hard.
Really difficult. Really great.
Mike,
And
Mike.
The mic, please. I think that you both would fill the position well, but we had to make a decision and we made our decision. And I would love to encourage, suggest, recommend, Ted, that you be on our planning board if that interests you at all. Yes. That's all I got.
Yes, thank you both for wanting to do it and having the passion to do it or applying.
Well, and I can add too, there's going to be come November, there's going to be 3 open seats on town commission and later this year.
3 terms that end. All right.
What are those terms? Are they all 4-year? Isn't there a 2-year somewhere in there? No.
What is that?
You know what? I'll have to look at.
Okay.
I know how long I'm stuck here.
Me too.
I know where I'm sitting for the next bit. So, unless I move outside of city limits.
I will look and try to remember tomorrow to shoot that off.
Okay.
You guys, so you know.
Thank you. That's good. Yeah,
I
that's
do
really good.
believe it is 4 years. I carried out Becky's term, so that's why it was for 2 that one time. I think that's what it was.
It was gonna be Christy and Corey. And would end, and maintenance of Phil end until, yeah, so it probably is 3-4 years.
3-4 year terms.
Yep, that's what I'm pretty sure.
And I'm filling the remainder of John.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'm calling the vote. I made the motion, so we're starting with you.
Aye.
All right. Welcome to the crew. You get to spend a moment with me before the next meeting, getting sworn into office. I now have your email and your phone number. So, yeah, planning board. Because the next big step that we're looking at, we've done kind of our infrastructure thing. The next thing that has to happen is the growth policy. So exactly where you guys have had experience that we have not had, it would be great to have another perspective that we don't get growing up here out in the sticks. So I'm not letting you go. All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you all.
We'll get you set up with all this fun.
7:30. Yeah, I'll just come pick you up.
I'm so glad. I can't go, and I'm gonna
Who?
pick your brain, everybody's brain afterwards. That's a,
I make a motion to adjourn.
bad deal.
Second.
Oh, what are we doing?
Adjourn.
Oh, sorry. Second. I second.
Aye.
I
Aye.
wasn't paying attention.
Aye.
I was talking. Aye. Now I'm gonna be submitting a sign. I had no idea I could get on the list. Can't wait.
I like the you were fat in February and December. I like that one.
No offense
blame them.
taken, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, I think I told you coming from Austin, El Arroyo's the Mexican restaurant there that puts up similar. I used to pass it every day. And so it was great. So when I saw it here, I was like, oh. I'm gonna ask Joe.
No, I went to, nope, never. My buddy was down there. That's where he went after I left. The door. I've been there. Wait. Where? I know it. Oddly enough, when I yes, I do every state, all counties, like whatever. I actually. Yeah, yeah. No, no, 1,000 miles. So if you want to race, ready. Were you worried? No, bike race. All right. See you guys. Come to the wastewater one. That would be, I think, conversation. Experience with why you can't. I want it all be like represented, like how I'm about it. Yeah, yeah. He said he just didn't go to it. And that's, of course, as soon as you get into the city, start growing, people just like say you don't get people part of like town activities. Congratulations. I think it'll be good. You can fill Christie's shoes. You're gonna have to first swear. Okay. Just making sure. No. Which might have been. Yeah. The biggest weakness. Right now. You can call me up. I got a lot of stuff. I'm a talker. Yeah. I think maybe I actually have.
Food thing, and so I don't know how we got on like a brownie special. John loves cake, like everything, but anyway, and then Gino asked me if the touch was like, yeah, Gino. And then Matt and John started talking about all the things that we should pop on his website. And the only one I ever heard was coffee. Yeah, and you know, like all that, I think it's all dirty. I'm like, fine, I'm like, whatever. And then, but Matt's like, with the pig thing, and I was like, what? Talking about, he's like, no, like if you eat enough pork, you can pop for steroids. And I'm like, that's gonna be my excuse for the rest of my life when I have that attitude. Like, I had too much bacon. I'm really great today. I had a pig. That's why there's so many domestic at Christmas time. Let me out. Oh, you don't get any touch to get the pig account.
And I'm gonna go to the next guy to.
We can right now.
Vicky done in here?
We're not.
Vicky, are you done in the closet?
So.
Out of the closet. Oh.
I'm just gonna say we don't want them yet. So we'll have to have Ginger.
Oh.
Vicky already returned her book. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, to dispel any rumors, could do that.
You never called one. What? You never called one.
Like,
Okay, you get.
so when is he gonna be sworn in next meeting?
Yeah. So right before the next meeting, we'll swear you in. I'm hoping. You have to come see Ginger for paperwork for your big payroll. I mean, they're all planning on retiring off their nice check.
Did you know you get
What is it? What do you get? Like 50 bucks? What do you get?
50 bucks?
Yeah, you get a little money. The most you can make
No.
there is $84.
Automatically get $100 a month. And then
Every additional
$50 a meeting.
Yeah.
A maximum of 200.
Yeah.
If you have one meeting.
A maximum, I can work a little harder than that. I didn't know I could do that. Shut up, Carrie. And then, you'll get your, no, book and your, well, your phone book and then your code book.
So.
Your chicken Bible. You were clearly not here today, but other than that, we're okay, like, if we have all three citizens for the very long agenda tonight. Every week. Well, you can only, $200, so. Doesn't mean you can't have a meeting every week for 4 hours. I just don't get paid for it. Oh, that's fine. Oh, yeah. Like Roy Master, like I can't believe that would not be too much. I was like, she. Oh, wait. I know why too. I don't tell her that I should get paid about topic. Now, I'm gonna be gone, so we have to pick a new meeting about town topic. Yeah. I know, right? Or we're gonna do that at the next meeting, but we gotta do that done. Any more, nominate me, but I wanna check on that.
You could be,
Planning board, and he gets to be the vice president.
just not good with
Yeah.
flow process.
So we'll be at.
What do we say now?
Yeah, so.
You do that,
If you get out of trouble,
let me know. Okay.
I don't know.
What meeting, that's next one.
But right now you have a horror still going. I've got the rolling.
Oh, what up?
And then shut down until there's not a quorum in here.
No, you-
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So, I told you guys to come and do the
Yeah, me too.
okay, and, okay, that's it.
Saturday.
What, now we're not a quorum.
No, I
So
don't.
all that's gonna be on YouTube?